Welcome back to True Echo, where real voices echo louder than prejudice, and where underdogs become legends. Today's story is one you'll never forget. Imagine walking into an interview room full of judgment, only to walk out having saved a multi-million-dollar company. This isn't just about getting a job, it's about changing the game. It's about Elena Johnson, a quiet, humble black woman who walked into a room meant to reject her, and ended up becoming the most powerful voice in it. Stay with us. What happens next will shock you, and inspire you. The morning sun slanted through the towering glass panes of the Morel Corp headquarters, casting long shadows across the marble lobby. It was the kind of place that whispered luxury in every echo, where the sound of stilettos and polished Oxfords filled the air more than words did. The space was pristine, cold in its perfection, designed to intimidate. It worked. Elena Johnson stepped through the doors quietly, clutching her canvas portfolio to her chest. Her oversized gray blazer hung off her shoulders, the seams worn soft by time and use. Her slacks were ironed but modest, and her shoes, ivory canvas sneakers, bore the scars of long commutes and late-night shifts. In every way, Elena stood apart from the other candidates seated in the waiting area. She felt it instantly. There they were, men and women in crisp suits, glowing with confidence and expensive perfume. They clutched iPads and portfolios that looked like they'd never seen a day of struggle. A low hum of self-assured laughter floated through the space. Elena moved to sit in a corner chair, but a woman in a stark white suit blocked her with a polished smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Wrong room, honey," the woman said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The laughter that followed wasn't cruel in volume, but in precision. Elena's cheeks burned. She didn't respond. She just nodded faintly and stepped to the farthest corner, folding herself into a seat as though trying to disappear. Her fingers gripped the edge of her folder until her knuckles ached. She tried to remember why she was here. Maya's voice echoed in her memory. "You think too small, Lena. This company says it wants thinkers. You're a thinker. Show them." But Elena couldn't feel like a thinker here. She felt like a mistake. The woman in the white suit crossed her legs with the elegance of royalty. Her name tag read Sarah Caldwell. Her blonde curls gleamed under the lobby lights. Elena tried not to watch as Sarah whispered to another candidate beside her, casting glances that stabbed like knives. "I wonder what she's doing here," one woman said. "Probably some diversity hire trial," a man murmured. A tight, painful silence expanded in Elena's chest. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply through her nose. She'd been here before, not this building, but this moment. Misjudged. Diminished. Dismissed. She knew it well. The glass doors to the interview chamber slid open, and a woman in a severe bun called out names with no emotion in her voice. One by one, the candidates were called in. Sarah Caldwell's name was read, and she rose like a crowned queen, giving Elena one last smirk before walking inside. Elena's name was the last. When the doors finally opened for her, Elena stood on trembling legs. Her feet felt like they carried more than just her weight, they carried generations of doubt, silence, and invisible labor. But they also carried resolve. She stepped into the interview room with a calm face and a riot of fear and fury in her chest. Inside, the room stretched wide and glassy. 3 people sat behind a sleek obsidian table. At the center was a man Elena recognized from company press releases, Mark Thorne, the CEO. He had the poise of a politician, his salt and pepper hair combed with surgical precision, his expression unreadable. To his left was Laura Bennett, Director of Strategy, whose posture exuded quiet control. To his right was a man with a mocking half-smile and glinting glasses, Brian Foster, young and clearly ready to tear something, or someone, apart. Thorne looked down at her resume, frowning. "Elena Johnson. No college degree?" His voice was ice. She began. "No certifications. No relevant experience." "And," He held up the document like it was contaminated. Typed on a typewriter. I didn't have access to. That's enough, Brian said with a chuckle. We get it. Laura sighed, already disengaged. I excel at problem solving, Elena said, trying to regain ground. Brian burst into a small, amused laugh. Everyone in this room excels at problem solving. The difference is, they've proved it. Thorne leaned back. Why are you here, Miss Johnson? Elena swallowed hard. She felt the walls closing in. I believe Morel Corp needs more than degrees. It needs fresh perspective. Well, Thorne said, standing. I think we've heard enough. Elena bowed her head. The pain in her chest was sharp. She turned for the door, each step slow, measured. Next time, Miss Johnson, Thorne called after her, know your place. As she touched the doorknob, a sudden shrill ring sliced the silence. Thorne answered the phone, and the color drained from his face. What do you mean Valeri pulled out? He snapped. They were supposed to sign today. Elena froze. Valeri? The $12 million deal? Behind the frosted glass, chaos exploded. Voices raised, laptops clattered. Someone shouted about losing months of negotiations. The word catastrophe was thrown. Elena hesitated. Then her hand fell away from the knob. She turned back, opened the door, and walked into the war room. I can fix this, she said clearly. Every head whipped toward her. What? Thorne growled. I know why Valeri pulled out, Elena said. And I know how to bring them back. Brian stood up. You. That's rich. Laura's mouth opened in stunned protest. You're not even qualified. You have nothing to lose, Elena said quietly but firmly. Let me show you. The room was a breath away from rejection. Then Thorne said the words that shifted history. You have one shot. Elena stepped toward the whiteboard, her mind racing with all the insights she'd studied late into the night, not from textbooks, but from human behavior, feedback patterns, and emotion mapping. This wasn't about looking smart. It was about being right. And she was. Elena stood before the whiteboard, the marker in her trembling hand a baton at the start of a symphony no one expected her to conduct. She didn't bother looking at the faces lined up behind the obsidian table. She already knew what they thought. That she was a long shot, a waste of time, a formality that had outlived its usefulness. But they didn't know the hours she had spent poring over publicly available reports, news releases, customer complaints, and online chatter about Morel Corp and Valeri. They hadn't seen her tiny bedroom covered in sticky notes and crude sketches. They didn't know that her canvas portfolio held more insight than their data-driven dashboards. She drew a line across the board, then added 2 vertical lines. Here's where the current plan breaks down, she began, her voice thin but steady. Customer engagement dropped significantly in Q3, particularly around user interface adoption. Why? Because you made the system smarter, but harder. Brian scoffed. You don't know that. I do, Elena replied calmly. Because I watched a woman struggle with your new interface just last week at the community center where I tutor adults in digital literacy. She tried to enroll in a Morel product demo, and it took her 15 minutes just to locate the correct tab. She gave up and left. That silenced them for a beat. Thorne narrowed his eyes. You're saying we lost Valeri because of interface confusion? No, Elena said. You lost them because your entire proposal ignored the user's emotional journey. Valeri's brand is built on ease and connection. Your proposal was cold and robotic. They sensed the disconnect. Brian leaned forward, eager to pounce. That's a big claim from someone who dropped her marker 5 minutes ago. Elena turned to him fully, lifting her chin. Yes, I dropped my marker. I've dropped a lot of things in life. But I picked them back up. That's the difference between people who've been handed everything, and people like me. The room fell dead silent. Laura's arms slowly uncrossed. Mark Thorne tilted his head, examining Elena as if seeing her for the first time. With renewed resolve, Elena sketched a new funnel on the board. It was simple. Clean. Human. "Here's what Valerie needs," she said, her voice now free of the nervous quiver. "An onboarding process that mirrors a natural emotional arc: curiosity, confidence, comfort. Every interaction should make the customer feel not just smarter, but safer." As she mapped out the new customer journey, complete with suggestions for interface tweaks, retention touchpoints, and empathy-based design elements, the atmosphere in the room changed. No one interrupted her now. Brian leaned back, expression unreadable. Laura scribbled notes. Thorne's arms fell to his sides, his rigid posture loosening. When she finished, Elena stepped back. "If you implement this, Valerie will stay. Not because we offered the lowest price, or the flashiest system. But because we finally saw them." Thorne didn't speak for several seconds. He just looked at the board. Then he walked slowly to the head of the room, arms behind his back, and said, "Brian, give her access to the Valerie files. She'll lead the revised pitch." Brian's head snapped up. "What?" "You heard me," Thorne said. "But she's not an employee." "Then fix it," Thorne barked. "Immediately." Laura cleared her throat. "Mark, are you sure?" Thorne turned to her. "I'm absolutely sure. We didn't just hire a problem solver. We hired a visionary." He looked at Elena again, this time with something deeper than approval. Something close to belief. "You'll present this to Valerie personally," he said. "And I'll be in the room when you do." Elena felt her knees weaken slightly, not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that she'd done it. She'd turned a room built to reject her into one now listening with reverence. "I won't let you down," she said softly. Thorne nodded. "I know you won't." By the time Elena left the boardroom, the morning sun had shifted. The cold hallways didn't feel quite so cold anymore. Her canvas shoes squeaked faintly against the tile floor, but now, instead of sounding out of place, they sounded like defiance. As she exited the building, she caught a glimpse of Sarah Caldwell still in the lobby, sipping coffee and chatting with another polished candidate. Sarah turned just in time to see Elena walking out. Their eyes met. This time, Sarah didn't smirk. She just stared. Elena didn't look away. Elena's bus ride home felt like a dream she hadn't dared to imagine. The rattle of the window beside her, the hum of conversation around her, the sway of the vehicle, it all blurred into the background as her thoughts churned like wildfire. The day had begun with humiliation, with sneers and pitying glances. But now, Elena was heading home not as a rejected applicant, but as the woman trusted to rescue a $12 million contract. She stepped into her small apartment just after 4 p.m., the door creaking the way it always did. The air inside was warm and still. Her apartment wasn't much, just a single bedroom, a battered couch, and a desk she'd rescued from a junk pile and repaired herself. But it was hers. It was where she'd spent countless late nights sketching out ideas, rereading customer feedback forums, learning from free online courses, and challenging herself to see the world in systems and stories. She threw her blazer on the couch, plugged in her flickering old laptop, and got to work. Brian Foster emailed her the full Valerie file an hour later, no greeting, no pleasantries. Just a dry, curt attachment link and a subject line, "Your plan." She clicked it open and began reading. The numbers were strong, even aggressive. Impressive at first glance. But as she sifted through the projections and analytics, her frown deepened. There were flaws, subtle, overlooked fractures in how the data was interpreted. The company had focused entirely on efficiency, automation, and back-end optimization. They had failed to ask one fundamental question: how does this feel for the customer? She dug through every piece of feedback Valeri had submitted during early testing phases. Several phrases jumped out repeatedly. Too impersonal. Hard to navigate. I don't feel like they get us. By 11:30 p.m., the desk was covered in printouts, index cards, and sticky notes. She had built a customer journey map from scratch, charting out how a Valeri client would feel at every interaction point, from the landing page to final onboarding. Her revisions weren't radical, they were subtle, intuitive, and steeped in empathy. At 1:15 a.m., her phone buzzed. A message from Maya. Maya, you okay? Did you make it out of the shark tank alive? Elena smiled, thumbs hovering over the screen before replying. Elena, not only made it out. They asked me to lead the rescue mission. Maya sent back a stream of question marks, followed by, wait, what? Elena called her. By the time she finished retelling everything, Sarah, the interview humiliation, the glass board presentation, Mark Thorne's reversal, Maya was breathless on the other end. That's the movie moment, girl. That's the story. You won the impossible. I haven't won anything yet, Elena said quietly. I have to face Valeri tomorrow. And I have to be perfect. Maya went silent, then said, you already did the impossible. Now just be yourself. They need you. You don't need them anymore. That night, Elena barely slept. She worked until her laptop gave a dying whine and the screen dimmed to black. She closed her eyes at 3:44 a.m., notebook still open on her lap, the lamp still glowing softly beside her. By 8 a.m., Elena was back inside Morel Corporation, walking through its marble halls with that same pair of worn canvas shoes. But this time, the stairs felt different. Some people glanced up and looked away quickly. Others stared longer, their faces unreadable. But no one sneered. No one whispered. And as she passed by the HR desk, even the front receptionist gave her a small nod. She stepped into the elevator, riding to the 32nd floor where the executive conference room sat like a temple. Mark Thorne was already waiting. Elena, he greeted, for the first time using her name without edge or mockery. Good morning, Mr. Thorne, she said, hiding her nerves behind her best calm. He gestured to the seat beside him. We present in 20 minutes. Across the room, Brian Foster paced like a caged wolf. When he saw Elena, his expression hardened. You ready to put the company's future in her hands? He asked Thorne dryly. She's the only one with a plan that makes sense, Thorne replied without hesitation. Brian scoffed, but said no more. When the Valeri executives arrived, their presence changed the room entirely. Polished, sharp, and clearly skeptical, they seated themselves across from the Morel team like generals in a negotiation. Mark introduced Elena as the lead innovator behind our reimagined strategy. There was a long silence. One of the Valeri reps, a woman named Monica Hale, raised an eyebrow. We were expecting your director of strategy. Thorne glanced at Elena, then said firmly, no. This time, we brought someone better. Elena stood. Her voice did not tremble. She didn't lead with data, or buzzwords, or market projections. She led with a story. I want to tell you about Lisa. She's one of Valeri's longtime customers, a teacher who relies on your software after long, draining days in the classroom. But when the new system launched, she logged in, and couldn't even find the Help tab. She felt overwhelmed, confused, and most importantly, forgotten. The Valeri team went still. Your customers want simplicity, not more complexity. They want to feel heard, not optimized. Elena's voice moved like water, calm, clear, impossible to ignore. She walked them through her revised customer journey, then presented a clean interface redesign, drawn by hand and digitized overnight. Then she dropped the final slide. A side-by-side chart comparing projected satisfaction and retention rates between Morel's original proposal, and her revision. The contrast was undeniable. The Valeri team sat in stunned silence. Monica Hale looked over the sheet, then locked eyes with Elena. This is what we were hoping for from the beginning. Mark Thorne exhaled softly. Another Valeri exec leaned forward. Who are you? Elena met his gaze. Someone who remembers that customers are people, not data points. Monica smiled faintly. We're back in. Just like that, the $12 million deal was saved. Mark Thorne turned to Elena as the Valeri team filed out. He didn't smile, but his eyes were filled with something deeper than approval, respect. You didn't just save the deal, he said. You saved this company from itself. Elena walked out of that boardroom like she was floating. The moment the Valeri team had shaken hands and confirmed the deal, a wave of quiet reverence had washed over the entire room. No one mocked her now. No one laughed. And most surprising of all, Brian Foster was silent, his mouth shut, his eyes downcast. He hadn't even tried to spin the victory in his favor. He couldn't. Outside the glass doors, Elena leaned against the marble wall, letting the coolness seep into her back as she took a long, shaky breath. Mark Thorne had already gone to make calls to the press team and board. The biggest account of the year had just been salvaged, by someone they hadn't even wanted in the building 24 hours earlier. She glanced down at her shoes, at the worn canvas that had once marked her as less than in this palace of glass and gloss. Now they were part of a legend. Her phone buzzed. Maya, I saw the news. They stayed with Morel. Elena, we did it. Maya, girl, they need to rename the company Elena Corporation. Elena laughed for the first time in days. A real laugh, light and full. But beneath the joy was a calm, powerful focus. She wasn't done yet. Back upstairs, Mark Thorne stood waiting by her cubicle, well, not a cubicle anymore. A sleek corner office had been cleared and named hers before she'd even returned from the meeting. No ceremony. No speech. Just a nameplate that read, Elena Johnson, Head of Human Insight Division. You're serious about this? She asked, blinking at the door. I'm serious about building a company that finally listens, Thorne replied. And I want you to lead that change. Elena stepped inside. The office was minimalist, but the windows gave her a view of the very streets she'd once walked with her head down, wondering if she belonged anywhere. And now she would lead a department dedicated not to crunching numbers, but to understanding people. Within hours, her inbox flooded. Staffers congratulating her. Directors asking for time on her calendar. One note even came from Laura Bennett. Elena, I underestimated you. I was wrong. I'm looking forward to learning from you. Welcome aboard. But not every message was supportive. From Brian Foster, a terse, bitter note arrived. Congratulations. I hope this works out better than your resume did. She didn't respond. Instead, she turned toward her team. Mark Thorne had assigned 5 junior analysts to report directly to her, young, ambitious, but still shaped by the same cold data culture Morel had always upheld. Her job wasn't just to lead them. It was to teach them a new way of thinking. At their first meeting, Elena began not with metrics, but with a story. I once watched a woman cry trying to find her retirement balance on a poorly designed app. No one saw her. No one thought her tears mattered. But I did. And if you're going to work in this department, then her story matters as much as the graphs. The room went still. One analyst, a woman named Priya, raised her hand slowly. Are we allowed to talk about that kind of thing in meetings now? Elena smiled. Not only allowed. Required. And so, the Human Insight Division took shape, slowly, cautiously. Not everyone liked it. Some directors grumbled. Brian kept his distance. A few department heads quietly resented the fact that a nobody was now shaping the future of the company. But change began anyway. Elena launched the company's first empathy-based audit, reviewing not what customers did, but how they felt doing it. She implemented a new phase in product testing, a frustration review, where real customers shared emotional pain points. And the results? Surprising even to skeptics. Customer satisfaction scores climbed. Support tickets dropped. Feedback became richer, more engaged. And, to the board's amazement, Morel's share price ticked upward. The turning point came 3 weeks later, at a full-staff town hall. Elena was scheduled to present company-wide insights. As she stepped onto the stage, the lights dimmed, and her image filled the screen behind her. No blazer. No makeup team. Just Elena, as she was, standing confidently in her worn canvas shoes. She didn't show PowerPoint slides. She showed handwritten notes from customers. One read. "For the first time, I feel like someone at Morel is listening." She ended with a single sentence, one that echoed through the entire auditorium. "If we care more, we win more." Silence. Then, thunderous applause. Even Laura Bennett stood. Priya wiped tears from her cheeks. Only one man remained seated, Brian Foster. He clapped slowly, mechanically, and didn't smile. After the crowd dispersed, he approached her. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" he muttered. "I'm doing my job," Elena replied simply. "The job you didn't think I was good enough for." He looked away. "You got lucky." "No," she said. "I got tired of being ignored. And I made sure you couldn't ignore me anymore." She turned and walked away, leaving him in the echo of his own bitterness. The next morning, Elena arrived early to her new office. The sun hadn't even crested the skyline yet, but the light filtering into the 32nd floor was already soft and golden. She took her time setting up, framed a picture of her grandmother on her desk, adjusted the little fan she'd brought from home, and arranged her scattered notes. No assistants, no entourage. Just her. There was a knock at the door. It was Laura Bennett. "Elena," she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. "You have 5 minutes." "Of course," Elena said, gesturing to the guest chair. Laura sat carefully, folding her hands in her lap like she wasn't quite sure how to begin. "I owe you more than an email," she said at last. "The day we interviewed you, I judged you before you even spoke." "I know," Elena replied. "Not unkindly. Just honestly." Laura nodded. "I've been in this business a long time. And I've seen many people burn out, fake it, or sell smoke. But what you did, what you're doing, it's real." Elena offered a small smile. "People have always assumed I had nothing to offer. I guess I got used to proving them wrong." Laura looked her squarely in the eye. "I want to help you grow this division. Whatever you need, resources, people, ask me." Elena paused, taken aback by the sincerity. Then she nodded. "All right. Then let's build something that lasts." They shook hands. In that moment, Elena realized something profound. Not only had she changed Laura's perspective, she was changing how this entire company thought. The ripple effect spread faster than even she anticipated. Soon, interns started requesting rotations in the Human Insight division. Product managers scheduled brainstorming sessions with Elena's team, seeking real-time customer emotion data. Even marketing started changing their tone, from polished perfection to authentic stories. But not everyone adapted. Brian Foster's resentment grew more visible by the week. He spoke less in meetings. Avoided eye contact. When Elena's name came up in praise, he often sighed or redirected the topic. One day, during a high-level strategy session with Mark Thorne and department heads, Brian couldn't hold back anymore. "She's turning this place into a therapy group," he snapped. "What happened to performance metrics? Optimization? Are we just going to let emotions run the company now?" The room fell quiet. All eyes turned to Elena. She remained calm, even as her heart pounded. "No one's replacing performance metrics, Brian," she said. "But when your performance ignores the human being behind the user, that's not success. That's ego." Brian rolled his eyes. "We didn't become a billion-dollar company by asking customers how they feel." Mark Thorne cut in before Elena could reply. "And we almost lost a $12 million contract because we didn't." Brian froze. Mark turned to Elena. "Keep going." That single moment, the CEO siding with her in front of the highest level of leadership, shook the last doubts loose from many of her critics. Even Brian went silent, his gaze darkening but his voice retreating. Weeks passed. And then, the email came. Subject, International Innovation Conference, keynote request, Elena Johnson. It was real. Elena had been invited to speak at the most prestigious tech leadership conference in the country. She reread the message twice before it sank in. The girl they once sneered at, the one in the faded blazer and frayed cuffs, was now being asked to stand before thousands of executives as a leader in human-centered strategy. Mark Thorne walked into her office later that day with a printed version of the invite. "I saw it. Congratulations," he said. "You deserve this more than anyone." Elena looked at him thoughtfully. "You ever regret how that first meeting went? The way you spoke to me?" Mark nodded slowly. "Every day." Elena didn't smile. But she did say, "Good." He chuckled at that, his first real laugh in front of her. "It made me better," he admitted. "It made all of us better." "I'll accept the keynote," Elena said. "But I won't tell them a fairy tale. I'll tell them the truth." Mark nodded. "That's why they want you." As Elena prepared for the keynote, her story, once a secret within the walls of Marel Corp., began spreading to the outside world. An online blog picked it up. Then a local journalist. Then, within days, a national news outlet ran a feature. From rejection to revolution, how one woman changed corporate culture with empathy. And just like that, the world took notice. Elena Johnson wasn't just leading a department. She was leading a movement. The auditorium lights dimmed, and a hush swept across the crowd. Thousands of leaders, executives, entrepreneurs, and analysts filled the seats at the International Innovation Conference. It was a sea of black suits and shimmering ambition. At the center of it all, a single spotlight lit up the stage, and Elena Johnson stepped into it. She didn't wear a designer suit. She didn't walk in with a team of stylists or a gleaming slideshow of buzzwords. She walked out in the same canvas shoes and a simple blazer, her curls pinned back neatly, eyes calm, presence unshakable. The host introduced her in reverent tones. "Please welcome the keynote speaker who redefined what corporate leadership looks like, Elena Johnson, head of Human Insight Division at Marel Corporation." Applause followed, but it wasn't the kind reserved for celebrities. It was the applause of awe. Of curiosity. Of people wondering, who is she? How did she get here? Elena approached the podium slowly. She didn't look at her notes. She looked at them. "When I first walked into Marel Corp," she began, her voice steady, "I wasn't expected to succeed. I was expected to fail. I didn't have the right shoes, the right resume, the right look. And by the end of my interview, they told me, without saying it outright, that I didn't belong." A few heads in the audience tilted, intrigued. "But then something happened," she continued. "A major client pulled out. A $12 million contract vanished in the span of a phone call. And in that chaos, they gave me 5 minutes. 5 minutes to speak. 5 minutes to fix what they couldn't." She paused, letting it settle. "And I did." There were murmurs now, low but growing. Not because I had the fanciest tools or the highest degree, but because I had something they'd forgotten to value, empathy. The audience fell silent again. "I'm not here today because I'm brilliant. I'm here because I listened, to the customers you stopped listening to. The ones crying in frustration, lost in your interfaces, ignored in your charts. I didn't just analyze data. I saw people. Elena's voice rose, stronger now. And that changed everything. The auditorium burst into applause. For the next 20 minutes, she broke down how empathy-driven strategy had reshaped Morel Corp's product development, customer engagement, and internal culture. She didn't pitch fluff, she presented case studies, retention data, and stories of people like Lisa, the teacher who became a metaphor for every customer left behind. By the end, a standing ovation erupted. Not because Elena dazzled them with corporate jargon, but because she made them feel. And in a world where feeling had been stripped from boardrooms and turned into afterthoughts, that was revolutionary. Backstage, a dozen executives waited to speak with her. They asked about partnerships, consultations. Several hinted at offers for positions far higher than the one she currently held. But Elena didn't say yes to any of them. Instead, she returned to her modest office at Morel Corporation. Not because she lacked ambition, but because the fight wasn't over yet. And she knew something the others didn't. Progress wasn't just about landing on a big stage. It was about changing the floors you'd once been told you didn't belong on. That afternoon, she returned to her office to find something unexpected waiting on her desk. A letter. Handwritten. Unfolding the page, she read. Dear Miss Elena. My name is Tasha, and I'm 14 years old. I saw your story online. I'm the only black girl in my school's tech club, and sometimes they laugh at me or say I don't belong. But then I saw you. And I just wanted to say thank you. Because now I know I do belong. Just like you did. Please don't stop. We're watching. Tasha. Elena sat down slowly, the letter trembling in her hands. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. All the boardrooms, all the applause, all the executives, it all faded. This was why she had to keep going. There were thousands of Tashas out there. And they needed more than inspiration. They needed proof that change was possible. She carefully folded the letter, tucked it into the corner of her desk, and whispered. I won't stop. Elena stood in her office, the city stretching out beyond the glass like a world she had finally claimed a place in. The late afternoon sun cast warm gold across her desk, catching the edges of Tasha's letter, the letter that reminded her of who she was really doing this for. Not just herself. Not just Morel Corporation. But for every young girl who had ever been told you don't belong before she'd even spoken a word. A soft knock pulled her from her thoughts. The door creaked open, and in stepped Mark Thorne. No suit jacket today, just a man, no longer guarded, holding something in his hands. Elena, he said quietly. We're about to have our monthly leadership meeting. But before we do, there's something I'd like to say. She raised an eyebrow, curious. He handed her a folded sheet of paper and waited. She opened it slowly. It was a prepared statement. A formal company-wide message with a single, powerful heading. An apology and a promise from the CEO. Mark cleared his throat and began reciting it aloud. Elena Johnson walked into our company as a stranger. We looked at her resume, her clothes, her shoes, and we judged her. Harshly. We didn't see her brilliance. We saw our own bias. And yet, despite our failure to recognize her worth, she stepped up in the moment that mattered most and saved us. Elena blinked as the words hit her with quiet force. I have decided to publish this apology in full, internally and publicly, Mark continued. Because companies like ours talk a lot about diversity. But talking isn't enough. We must act. And our first action must be accountability. He lowered the page. I was wrong, Elena. Not just professionally. Personally. And I want everyone to know it. She didn't speak right away. She just looked at him, and for the first time since their bitter first encounter, she saw a man truly willing to learn. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means something." Mark smiled, small, but genuine. "You've already changed Morel Corporation. Now I want you to help change the entire industry." Elena looked toward the letter from Tasha again, then back to him. "Then we better get to work." 2 weeks later, the company-wide meeting room overflowed. Every department. Every level. People lined the walls, filled chairs, stood shoulder to shoulder to hear what Elena had to say. She stepped to the podium wearing that same light gray blazer, her curls now proudly framing her face. She spoke with confidence, strength, and warmth. "We began as strangers to one another. You saw me as an outsider. And I saw you as something unreachable. But now, we're here. Together." The staff hung on to every word. "We will no longer build for performance alone. We will build for people. And starting today, every major rollout must pass a simple test. Would you enjoy this experience? Would your mother? Your neighbor? Your child?" Smiles and nods broke out across the room. No more systems that frustrate. No more strategies that ignore. No more cultures that silence. She paused, eyes scanning the audience. "Some of you may still be wondering, how did someone like me get here?" Then her smile deepened, turning into something fierce. "I didn't wait for permission. I saw a gap, and I filled it. I didn't fit your mold, and I never will. But maybe that mold was the problem." Applause began slowly, then surged into thunder. Mark Thorne rose first, clapping with open admiration. Laura Bennett followed. Even department heads who had once dismissed her stood in respect. At the back of the room, Brian Foster remained seated for several seconds. But slowly, even he stood, his hands coming together, reluctant but inevitable. That moment cemented something unshakable. Elena Johnson had not only earned their respect, she had redefined what respect looked like. A few months later, her story reached classrooms, boardrooms, college lectures, and dinner tables. It became the subject of articles, case studies, and viral clips. She was invited to Washington, D.C. to speak at a national summit on inclusive leadership. She declined most public offers, staying rooted in her work, but she never stopped writing back to every letter she received from young women like Tasha. One morning, Elena walked into her office to find her team gathered, wide-eyed. "Check the news," Priya said, barely containing her grin. Elena glanced at the screen. Headline: Forbes names Elena Johnson Leader of the Year, from rejection to revolution. The article recounted her journey in stunning detail, from the frayed cuffs and the humiliating lobby moment, to the saving of the Valeri deal and the global movement her leadership had sparked. Elena sat back in her chair. She didn't cry. She didn't cheer. She just smiled. Because she knew, this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Elena Johnson's story teaches us that leadership doesn't come from power. It comes from vision, empathy, and the courage to stand when the world wants you silent. She didn't change minds by shouting, she changed them by showing up, again and again, until they had to listen. As Elena once said, you don't have to fit their mold. You just have to outgrow it. If this story inspired you, subscribe to True Echo for more powerful stories that echo truth, strength, and redemption. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated and proved them wrong? Don't forget to like and share this video so more people hear Elena's story. Because the world doesn't just need more leaders. It needs more Elena Johnsons.